This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on India-Mauritius ties over the years. The participants are Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Manish Anand, journalist.
Prime Minister of Mauritius, Pravind Kumar Jagannath, today arrived in India. He will be taking part in a couple of events in Gujarat, which includes groundbreaking ceremony of WHO Global Center for Traditional Medicine in Jamnagar, while he will also take part, along with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in a Global Ayush Investment and Innovation Summit in Gandhinagar. Mauritius and India have shared history, they have common ancestry, and we have rich cultural heritage. With us, Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, we would like to know from you, sir, how do you see the visit of Mauritius Prime Minister, which is for 8 days, in the current context?
So you are very right when you say that it is a very important relationship. It's a very critical relationship. It's a strategic partnership between the two countries. And I would rate this visit as being very significant and very important, because over the last 2 years, the international travel has not been taking place. So although there have been visits, for instance, our External Affairs Minister visited Mauritius, visited Port Louis in February of last year. But otherwise, there have not been so many visits between the two countries, because in the past, between India and Mauritius, the exchange of visits at the highest level has been very intense and very active. For instance, just to mention, in 2019, before COVID had struck the world, we had the privilege of receiving the Prime Minister, Mr. Pravind Kumar Jagannath, as one of the few non-BIMSTEC member leaders to participate in the oath-taking ceremony by Prime Minister Modi and his cabinet. And before that, you would also recall that even in 2014, Mauritius was the only non-SAARC country that was invited to participate in the oath-taking ceremony of Prime Minister Modi in 2014. So here, this visit coming for 8 days is very significant, because our relations, our partnership, our cooperation, our collaboration with Mauritius is very multifaceted. It encompasses defense and security cooperation, it encompasses trade, it encompasses health, it encompasses culture, infrastructure development, development partnership, geostrategic considerations and interests. So on many of these aspects, there is a convergence. And this will be an excellent opportunity to pay attention to all these aspects, because in addition to the two events that you have mentioned, Manish, that the Prime Minister would be participating in the groundbreaking ceremony in Jamnagar tomorrow, and also taking part along with Prime Minister Modi in the Global Ayush Investment and Innovation Summit in Gandhinagar. He would also be traveling to Varanasi, and he would also be spending some time there. So it is a very broad-based visit, and I'm confident that it will provide a very strong impetus to our already vibrant and dynamic bilateral partnership.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, we would like to go a little back in the history. When Mahatma Gandhi was traveling from South Africa to India, he had a stopover in Mauritius, and that event still remains etched in the memory of the Mauritian people. Again, in 1968, India was accorded centrality in Mauritius' global affairs, and since then India has been a dependable partner in developmental works in that country. In that context, do you think that the people-to-people cooperation and developmental works have met the expectations of Mauritius?
Manish, when you say that our relations really date back many centuries, and of course the seminal visit of Mahatma Gandhi on his way from South Africa to India when he stopped over in Mauritius in 1901, that has had a very strong impact on the psyche and the consciousness of the people of Mauritius. And that is, I think, one of the factors why Mauritius decided to adopt 12th of March as their National Day, because it was on this day that Mahatma Gandhi had launched the Dandi March, and this also fight for independence is etched very deep in the hearts of the people of Mauritius. So the relations between India and Mauritius, of course, are ancient and historic and based on shared history and common culture. Of course, in modern times, it is only in 1507 that we see accounts of the Portuguese coming to Mauritius and the neighboring islands. Although before that, we did have Arabs spending some time in these islands. But after the Portuguese, we had the Dutch, then the French, and then the British. And it is the British who brought the Indians here to these islands in 1834. When they came as indentured labor, because this is basically a plantation economy, sugar plantation. So about 500,000 people came from about 1834 till the first decades of the 20th century. And out of that, about 2/3 of them decided to stay back. And today we find that about 68% of the population of Mauritius is of Indian origin. And we have also about 50% of the people profess Hinduism. And this is, I think, the only country in Africa which has such a large number of Hindus and such a large proportion of Indian origin people. So that, of course, gives a lot of energy to our bilateral partnership. And we have brought it in modern times to cover many other areas of economic cooperation, of security cooperation, and of developing infrastructure and expanding our trade ties.
Indeed. In fact, the metro project which has been developed in Mauritius with the support of India is also named after Mahatma Gandhi. That shows the deep relationship between the two countries. Ambassador Sajjanhar, India's cooperation with Mauritius is part of Small Island Developing States Cooperation of India in South-South cooperation in the Indian Ocean. And we have seen that our focus has been on the human developmental aspects, like the kind of projects we have done: renal transplant unit, maritime security, forensic science laboratory, national library and archives, and so on. So we, unlike China, we are not looking for gains from our partnership. Rather, we want to contribute to the development of Mauritius and other small island countries.
No, you're absolutely right. I think Mauritius is a case in point, but since you mentioned about the small island states, you would recall that Prime Minister Modi had traveled to Fiji in November 2014 when he had traveled from India to Myanmar for the first East Asia Summit. From there, he traveled to Australia. And that was the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Australia in 28 years. And from there, he traveled to Fiji, which was the first visit by an Indian premier to Fiji in more than 33 years. And there he was able to collect leaders of all the 14 Pacific Island states. And then next year in 2015, he invited all those leaders to come, and he had a summit with them in Jaipur in 2015. So India is very much focused on the interests, needs and collaboration with the small island states, small countries, and Mauritius is no exception. So although Mauritius is a small country, meaning it's an archipelago, it's a conglomeration of small islands. Mauritius is the largest of them. Total land area would be about 2,040 square kilometers. But its exclusive economic zone is huge, is very vast, to the tune of 2.3 million square kilometers. And then that in terms of the riches and what its assets are in the ocean, they are huge, and of course it controls large expanse of the sea lines of communication. So India has been collaborating with the Mauritius, like with other countries, on the basis of their needs, on the basis of their requirements, on the basis of their priorities, and not what India might wish to superimpose on them as China does. So China's development model, as you referred to, is very, very different. These projects which it undertakes, whether it is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, whether it is Hambantota Port, or in Myanmar, or in Malaysia, these are not projects which are economically viable, they are not environmentally sustainable, and even they land the recipient countries, the host countries, in a debt trap, as we have seen in the case of Sri Lanka, one of the big reasons for the fact that it finds itself in such an economic impasse is because of the projects and the entry of China in a big way as far as that country is concerned. But here, as far as Mauritius is concerned, India has been, in a very responsible manner, it has been supporting infrastructure. For instance, in 2016, we extended a grant of US dollars 353 million to Mauritius as a special economic package to execute 5 priority projects which were identified by Mauritius. They wanted these to be executed because they thought they knew that these are of benefit to their people. The Metro Express project that you referred to, which is the most significant in terms of the financial outlays named after Mahatma Gandhi, and an amount of $275 million was expended on that. The Supreme Court building, $30 million. A new ENT hospital, ear, nose, throat hospital, $14 million. And digital tablets to primary school children were given out for $14 million. And the last of this was the social housing project, which was inaugurated in a virtual format by Prime Minister Modi and the Mauritian Prime Minister Pravin Kumar Jagannath in January 2022. In addition, there are a number of hospitals, eye centers, conference centers that India has constructed for the benefit of the people of Mauritius. And there is also, at the same time, there was a launch of construction of a state-of-the-art civil services college. And this will provide a fully equipped and functional facility for the civil servants of Mauritius to undertake various training and skill development programs.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, small island nations are seen to be vulnerable to external economic shock. And in the context of the ongoing economic crisis in Sri Lanka, we have seen that India is playing the role of stabilizer in its economy by giving line of credit. Do you think that Mauritius too, because tourism had crashed during the COVID pandemic, Mauritius is also vulnerable to external economic shocks because 10% of Mauritius import is from India. Do you think India can play the role of a stabilizer even in the economy of Mauritius?
Yes, absolutely. I think small island economies, I think they face particular challenges because we saw that they are also open to shocks of tsunamis in the oceans, like what happened in 2004, what happened in as far as some of the islands of Japan, Fukushima in 2011, and elsewhere. And of course, with the total, the black swan event like the COVID-19 pandemic, countries which are so dependent on either foreign remittances or on tourism have suffered greatly. And Sri Lanka, as you said, also suffered because 10% of its economy is also dependent upon tourist arrivals and also more on remittances. So in the case here also in Mauritius, it is, as I had mentioned earlier, a plantation economy, but of course now it has been diversifying. It's also dependent very heavily on tourism. But I think it has conducted itself much more judiciously. If we look at its indicators, we find that it is a prosperous economy. It's with this small population of about 1.2 million. It has a GDP of 32 billion US dollars in purchasing power parity. Per capita is about 25,000. So that makes it into developed sort of an economy, high middle income economy. Its human development index is very high. World Bank rates it as 0.8. So it is up there with the European countries. India, which is so well entrenched, and now with the signing of the Common Economic Comprehensive Partnership Agreement that was signed last year in February during the visit of our External Affairs Minister, I think this will bring the two countries closer, and India will be able to not only continue but to play a very meaningful role, but also expand its role in the bilateral trade and economic cooperation.
Mr. Ashok Sajjanhar, you have given us in-depth perspective and insight on India's relationship with Mauritius. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India-Mauritius ties over the years. The participants were Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Manish Anand, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official.